our next speaker. We have a development professional and licensed environmental planner currently serving as officer in charge, Chief of Technical Assistance Division of the Environmental, Land Use, and Urban Planning and Development Bureau under the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development. She leads the division in providing technical assistance and capacity development to local government units, national agencies, and other stakeholders in the human settlements and urban development sector. Her professional experience spans from community-driven development, disaster risk reduction, climate change adaptation, and social protection, reflecting her commitment to building resilient and inclusive communities. To share the two newly launched DHSUD guidelines, let's all welcome ENP Jenny Rose Olfindo. ENP Jenny Rose, good morning po.
Well, hello, good morning. May I ask that I be allowed to share my screen?
Sure po, Ma'am Jenny Rose. You may share
Okay,
now.
thank you, Claude. Um, so as mentioned earlier, the SUD recently issued some urban development guidelines, and these are in addition to the one that was presented by Ms. Jen earlier. So the resilient urban design and development guidelines and the open space development guidelines actually contribute to the attainment of the goals under our Planado program, which aims to strengthen local planning for sustainable human settlements. Under the program, what we aim is to achieve zero backlog on the CLUT and, of course, implement our Urbanex or our urban vision for 2020, which includes the transformation in our urban landscapes through the implementation of innovative, resilient urban renewal and development projects and strategies. And these guidelines align now with those goals or objectives of the program. So my presentation is divided into two. So let's talk about the RUDD or the Resilient Urban Design and Development Guidelines first. Okay. So my presentation for the RUDD guidelines is divided into five. First, I'll present an overview of the guidelines and a review of some urban planning, urban design, and key elements concepts. And the third part of my presentation will focus on some core principles of urban design. And the fourth part would focus on the technical applications of RUDT. And then lastly, we will discuss how RUDT is implemented in the LGUs and mainstream in the 12-step CLUP process. So RUDT is not just about improving how cities look. Our LGUs will benefit from mainstreaming resilient urban design because it is about saving lives, protecting investments, and ensuring sustainable growth. For LGUs, our RUDT guidelines also meet the legal obligations while addressing very practical needs. So RUDT strengthens the CLUP and zoning or our LGU's main planning tools. It is also aligned and fulfills our LGU's mandate under Republic Act 7160, Republic Act 10121, and Republic Act 9729. So as also mentioned by Ms. Jen earlier, the Philippines is constantly exposed to hazards. We are ranked number one in the global disaster risk. We are facing various typhoons, floods, earthquake, etc. And urban design now responds to this vulnerability by creating safe, compact, and well-planned neighborhoods with open spaces to absorb floods, safe routes for evacuation, and cooler and greener environments. RUDT also benefits our LGUs since we are building resilient communities that are far more cost effective. So we are creating sustainable buildings, for example, that reduce energy and maintenance costs. We implement walkable and connected communities that attract investment. And more broadly, beyond disaster risk reduction, urban design also offers other benefits, among others. First, it provides benefits along health and mobility, along the environment. It strengthens our social and cultural community identity. And of course, strategies like RUDT or even the planned unit development presented earlier makes land and service management more efficient, cutting costs and improving transparency. Now, the recently issued RUDT guidelines of DHSUD aims to equip our LGUs and partners with design comfort tools aligned with local planning to strengthen their capacity for positive urban change. So the guidelines um, aims to enhance urban and regional connectivity and resilience, simplify urban design integration, and develop replicable urban design templates. So the second part of my presentation will focus on some urban planning and urban design elements. So this is just a review of what are the elements contained in the guidelines. So for as contained in the guidelines, urban planning and urban design, we say that they are very distinct, but they are interrelated concepts. So planning sets the framework, while design translates those plans into physical form and spaces. But together, these two make sure that our cities are vibrant, functional, and people-centered. So here are just some of the considerations din po, when we are planning for resilient urban design and development of resilient spaces. We acknowledge that they differ in scale, um, they differ in orientation in terms of treatment of space, time frame, and function. So planning works at larger levels, pwedeng regional, provincial, municipal, pwedeng neighborhood. We consider long term or shorter term in terms of time frame, etc. So for our LGUs, the real value of urban design plans are translated into tangible elements that people can see, use, and benefit from every day. So these elements include yung pong tinatawag nating urban structure or the layout ng iba't ibang blocks, plots, and spaces and networks. We also have yung mobility network, which connects our pedestrians, our vehicles, and the movement of our goods. We also have public spaces like plazas, parks, public transport environs, yung ating mga terminals, mga transport hubs. And then we also have buildings whose scale, design, pertain to the relation to the surroundings, and the smaller objects in the public realm, pong street furniture, trees, lighting, signages, etc. So together, these define image, character, and functionalities of our communities. But then we ask why RUDD matters for our LGUs. So these elements give concrete entry points for implementing the RUDD guidelines. So instead of leaving policies as abstract documents, we ensure that our impact is felt on the ground and we offer better mobility, we offer better spaces or safer spaces, greener environments, and stronger community identity to our constituent. So now that we've looked at the reasons and benefits and the value of implementing RUDP in our localities, let's look at the principles that will guide our LGU so that every project, whether big or small, aligns with resilient urban design. So in so doing, um, we espouse, no, as also mentioned po no, sa ating RUDT guidelines, these urban design principles. So the first one is the sense of which ensures that design corresponds to and reinforces the local distinctive characteristics and landscapes of our locality. Second is on well-being and amenity, which guarantee that public spaces are vibrant and pleasant to use. Third principle po is on ease of understanding. So these attest that the design is easy to understand and that users can create clear image of the place. Another is on ease of choice, again, which ensures that design allows for variety and mixed uses to facilitate diverse amenities, services, culture, and community. In terms of urban design, it also follow or espouse the clarity of course. These certifies that our public and private spaces are clearly delineated, ensuring comfort of the users and maintaining the character of the space. We also espouse connectivity and permeability to ensure that people can move around easily or freely within the space. Connectivity and permeability ensures um, ease of change. Sorry, ease of change ensures that the design is flexible and can be changed easily. And of course, we also espouse the principles of equity, inclusivity, and sustainability. So this ensures that our designs promote social justice through the creation of spaces and structures that promote inclusion and empowerment of vulnerable groups. And of course, our resilient urban designs can fulfill the needs of the future generations without sacrificing the current needs. So while we apply these principles in designing our spaces, um, we see that housing projects become safer, and we have better road networks and mobility. We have more adaptable public facilities, and we have livable and resilient communities. So now that we've seen the guiding principles that we follow when designing resilient urban spaces. Let's explore some of the technical applications that our LGUs can adopt so that we can bring these principles in practice. So I will be just showing you some overview nitong mga some of these technical strategies that are also discussed in our guidelines. So these are, kumbaga ito yung practical applications or tools that the LGUs can use to transform their plans into real change on the ground. So this is, as also mentioned in our guidelines, this is not a one size fits all. No, we are providing the LGUs a menu of approaches um, with these different technical strategies so that the LGUs can adapt these into their own context and based on their current resources. Okay, so this the first strategy is on nature-based solutions, and which uses natural processes and green infrastructure to address climate and disaster risk. Meron din po tayo na nakalagay sa ating guidelines, yung ating place strategy. So it is more than just urban design. It also empowers people to reimagine and reinvent the public spaces, transforming them into vibrant, inclusive, and functional environments. So in this picture, makikita niyo po our partner, this is the Quezon City Bike Lanes project. And then third, we also have open spaces, which connects these areas through corridors and nodes, strengthening accessibility, maximizing the spaces in the cities so that they become more livable, they become more sustainable and more resilient. So let's talk about open spaces later when we discuss the OSD guideline. We also have sustainable urban mobility, which promotes environmentally friendly transportation modes in urban development planning that enhances accessibility, safety, and quality of life. So ito naman po ay this is the pedestrianization of the general ministry. If you've been in Intramuros also. So wider walkways, there are bike lanes, there are accessibility routes. The fifth one would be on smart city. So smart city is an adaptive, responsive, and dynamic. It uses technology to manage assets, services, and resources more efficiently. So it leverages the use of digital infrastructure, Internet of Things, big data analytics, so that cities can optimize urban services to promote better access, enhance transparency, and promote resilience as well. The sixth strategy is on heritage conservation and culture. So you will see here in the picture yun pong Paco Park, no? That was transformed or revitalized to preserve its historic circular walls and chapel while introducing landscape spaces. So we are able to safeguard the character defining elements of cultural resources, ensuring heritage value and extending their physical life, no, through this strategy. And then lastly, we have urban renewal, which is a comprehensive approach to address housing shortages, insufficient transportation, poor sanitation, disorganized land use, and similar problems. So key strategies include infill development, um, urban waterfront development, for example. Here you will see, one of these woods projects also, the Pasig River urban development. So this project improves connectivity between Manila Bay and Laguna de Bay and turns the river into a hub of economic growth and community engagement. So given all these strategies that are open to our local government units, let's see how we can implement RUDP in our LGUs. So this allows our LGUs to transform their vision into action so that we can create more livable neighborhoods, stronger local economies, and implement or design quality public spaces for our communities. So the guidelines highlight the importance of aligning the urban design and development process with the CLUP. So isang key feature po dito is to simplify and demonstrate how urban design can be integrated into our 12-step CLUP process. So kung i-mainstream po natin yung ating urban design and development into the CLUP, our LGUs can maximize benefits such as better management of urban growth, stronger local economic development, and livable neighborhoods supported by quality public spaces and facilities. So in this slide, you will see the steps in implementing resilient urban design strategies. And in the succeeding slide, you will see how these 12 steps are also aligned um, or mainstreamed in our 12-step CLUP process. Okay, so for step one, I would just like to highlight more. In this step, now we can form technical team with LGU offices, private sector, and the academy to organize an urban design and development group or TWG. In step two, now as we review our CLUP vision and goals, so we ensure that urban design and development concepts and strategies are also aligned and complementary from the outset of our planning process. So i-align po natin yung ating UTP strategies with our LGU's vision. And then on the third step, so this involves the assessment of our environmental context. So dito na po papasok yung pag-update ng ecological profile and ng ating climate and disaster risk assessment data and process or yung SEED. For step three, for step four, this covers identification of urban design strategies based on the LGU's development trust. So the local government must identify, select, and adopt yung appropriate urban design strategies that are aligned and consistent with their development trust. So these urban design strategies are also discussed, no, in detail and provided for as a guide for our LGUs in the guidelines. And under step five, we define where UDD can have the most impact because we identify or determine the major or key areas for UDT intervention in accordance with the assessments conducted in the previous steps of our process. For step six, ito na po natin yung ginagawa, yung verification. Um, so the initial data gathered in the earlier steps will be verified and any gaps will be addressed through on-site visits and primary data collection methods. So nagkakaroon po tayo dito ng site surveys and site analysis. Okay? And those will serve as inputs when we develop our UDT conceptual plans and design. So we create diagrams, models, and spatial strategies in this state. So that our UDT core group is in the position to interpret ano ba yung special needs and aspirations and formulate them through these conceptual plans and designs. And on step eight, this is where we conduct our design workshop. So after the creation of the conceptual plan and design for UDT, we design workshop where we present the initial UDT strategies, get stakeholder feedback based on the presented strategies, plans, and design, and then refine yung mga nabuo natin from this state. And then step 9, after we have the inputs and feedback from our design workshop, no, we are able to work and refine and enhance that will our conceptual plan. So this involves a more detailed and polished creative inputs from our PWG. So this is just to show you yung an example develop of a conceptual design plan. And based from the refinements, so pwedeng based from the requirements or pag-uusap po ng mga LGUs. So this is just one of the samples. And then for step 10, this is where na yung ating UDT into our CNUP and ZO. So this, we are formally adopting it in our policy. So UDT priority area narratives in the CNUP will have a more seamless transmission in its discussions towards a more form-based zoning strategy that regulates as well as proactively establishes the development guidelines in both individual and collective building scale and intra and inter-LGU connected and urban fabric cohesiveness. And then into step 12, moving on, this is where we implement na po yung ating urban design guidelines and then projects. Okay. So we were able to execute our identified priority projects, and we are also able to identify kung kanina tayo pwede makipag-partner na stakeholders to plan, to fund, and to implement these RUTP projects. And lastly, aligned with the step 12, with the inclusion of the UDP guidelines, this is where we monitor the progress, update the plans, and evaluate the implementation of our UDP projects. So through these steps, The RUDT process provides the LGUs with a clear flow from preparation and to implementation of the RUDT plan. So it starts with organizing a technical working group, aligning the CLUT vision with updated environmental assessments, and identifying the strategies, priority areas, and feasible projects. We also develop the conceptual plans and then further refine them through design workshops and feedbacking session with our stakeholders. So this ensures integration and action, and draft designs are revised and adopted into the CLUP and zoning ordinance. So which provides for the legal basis of its implementation. So at the end of it, and finally, of course, the review and assessment process keep the projects relevant and responsive. So at the end of it, LGUs are able to produce a local urban design guide by following this step. So using this flow, the LGUs can effectively manage growth, enhance livability, and deliver sustainable development for its constituents. So that's why, with these benefits, no, our LGUs, no, are able to build, no, future-ready communities, strengthen their CLUTs and zoning ordinances, put investments where they matter through the implementation of our RUDT plans and projects. Now, my second presentation will cover open space development guidelines. So again, this is another key policy framework that guides in creating sustainable, inclusive, and resilient human settlements. So in terms of our discussion on OST guidelines, my presentation is divided into these topics. So we'll first begin with an overview and rationale for the OSD, understanding why we need to update, why we need to have these updated guidelines today. And then we'll discuss in brief some principles of open space development, the scale and zonal influence, and the development approaches and strategies under the PCRC framework. And then we'll also briefly unpack, no, yung ating synergized classification system, followed by how open space development is integrated again within the 12-step CLUP process. And then I'll show you later on the open space development plan that our LGUs can also follow and really implement for ating OST guidelines. So similar our RUTT guidelines, no, these guidelines were developed given the need to address the growing urban and climate resilience challenges. Um, and then the value of green and open spaces in DRR and climate adaptation. And we've seen how open spaces um, contribute, no, to improving our community's health, economic viability, and promoting various environmental benefits. So the open space guidelines streamlines the open space integration in the land use planning process. It introduces a synergized classification system of open spaces, and it provides a guide for our LGUs um, to pursue open space development planning. So these guidelines offer our LGUs strategies. How can they better promote sustainability, improve urban resilience, enhance well-being, no, or influence our leaders, policymakers, and the general public, preserve, conserve, regenerate, and recreate our natural ecosystems, and enhance and preserve the cultural and natural heritage. So what are open spaces? We this is just a review for no, how we define or open spaces as also indicated in the guidelines. So these are areas in the city or surrounding region, according to Werner, no, that are free of buildings and more open space for use. So they can either be green open spaces or non-green open spaces. The DSUD Then HLURB, CLUP Guidebook, Volume 3, 2014 also included a definition of open spaces. So under the guidebook, it defines open spaces as permanent areas where permanent buildings shall not be allowed and which may only be used as forests, buffer or green belts, parks, and playgrounds. There are also notable definitions no, of open spaces under BP 220 and Presidential Decree um, 1216. There are also definitions that you can find in our National Building Code and also an international definition espoused by the Food and Agriculture Organization. The open spaces serve as our lungs of our cities. No? They are vital for air, water, biodiversity, and well-being of our communities. And as mentioned earlier, the value of open spaces, um, they no economic viability. They offer places for relaxation, connection, and cultural expression. So in a country like the Philippines, these open spaces is no longer optional. No, it is also essential. Kinakailangan at essential to para sa atin so that we can have healthier, more livable, and resilient communities. So as mentioned, open spaces offer various environmental, economic, and social benefits. So our open spaces are no longer luxuries, but they are considered lifelines. So lifelines that sustain both people and the environment. The second part of my presentation will provide some principles of OS. So from understanding the need, why open spaces are essential, um, we move on to the principles or the core values that guide how open spaces should be planned and managed. So in the guideline, you will see the four pillars of our open spaces. So these are sustainable, responsive, resilient, and livable. So these principles align with the national design programs and provide LGUs with a strong planning framework. So first, our open spaces must support the sustainable development goals. It is able to balance ecological health, economic viability, and social equity. It should be sustainable. Again, it doesn't compromise the future generations' ability to benefit from them while meeting the needs of the present. Second, our principle is on responsiveness. So open spaces must reflect community needs. So they are user-centered, they're inclusive, flexible, and culturally relevant. So they should serve as spaces for recreation, culture, and social connection. The third would be on resiliency. So open spaces must adapt to disasters, climate change, and urbanization. They should withstand and recover from these challenges while maintaining their purpose. Okay. And lastly, the fourth principle is on livability. So open spaces should be livable. They should enhance quality of life. They must be safe, accessible, and comfortable. And aside from that, they also should foster identity, belonging, and community interaction. In our guidelines also, we have identified or we recognize that function at different scales and zones, from national to regional to provincial to municipal or city, and down to the smallest unit, which is the barangay. Ang gusto lang po nating mensahe dito is open spaces that we develop must seamlessly integrate across our cities, across our communities, and across our ecosystems. So again, the OSD guidelines consider both the administrative and ecological skills. so that our open spaces meet human needs while protecting biodiversity and ecosystem function. So the key message here po is that our open space planning ay kinakailangang integrated, efficient, and sustainable. So the next set of slides will offer or will explore yung PCRC development approaches and strategies when developing our open spaces. So I will just run through them quickly, in the interest of time. But these are the approaches that are offered to our LGUs as stated in our guidelines. So these development approaches are preserve, conserve, regenerate, and create. So these are practical options na makakatulong sa ating LGU. So this will guide them depending on the local context and the goals of your open spaces projects. So by following these development approaches, we are able to observe yung pillars of quality of open spaces as discussed earlier. So the first of this development approach is preservation, where we protect areas of high natural or cultural value and keep them intact to prevent degradation. So here are some of the examples, so that we can better appreciate when we say a preservation approach in open space development. So in the slide, makikita niyo po dito isang example is the Puerto Princesa River National Park. Yan. Next is on conservation. An example is the La Mesa Eco Park, which manages resources responsibly while preventing further degradation. We also have the Marikina Riverbanks development as an example of a regeneration approach where we restore degraded areas or damaged areas to make them more functional and resilient spaces. And lastly, we have creation where we establish new open spaces and often in urban centers. My next set of slides will just go through the synergized classification system of the open spaces as established in our guidelines. So, i-highlight ko na lang po bakit importante na magkaroon ng synergized classification system or ma-define natin ito when we do our open space development. Defines yung ating open space in terms of our guidelines. In our guidelines, the open space is an umbrella term that shall refer to land spaces that is either predominantly undeveloped or set aside in terms of any law, land use, policy, zoning, or special plan for the purpose of preservation, conservation, regeneration, and creation of more open spaces. So in the guidelines, nandun po yung tatlo na classification system, which are blue open spaces, green open spaces, or tinatawag nating non-blue and non-green open spaces. So the blue open spaces refers to an open space that primarily focuses on water-related features such as rivers, lakes, wetlands, and coastal zones. So, i-run ko na lang po, again, we also categorize open spaces according to scale, from the largest unit to the smallest unit. So these are just some examples po, makikita nyo some of the examples of our blue open spaces category. Again, it varies per scale. So at the city or municipal level, we have esplanades, peatlands, and mangrove areas. These are some of the examples. We also have green and open spaces, which refers to an open space primarily characterized by its natural vegetation and landform. So these include parks, forests, grasslands, and other types of vegetated landscapes. So again, they vary depending on the scale. So these are just some of the examples at the regional level and green open spaces at the municipal or city level. We have community parks, national parks, memorial parks, nature reserves, plantations, and golf courses. At the smallest unit, we have green and open spaces at the barangay level, such as communal ranch, meadows, mixed-use parks, pocket parks, rain gardens, and or vertical gardens. So just some of the examples. And then we also have non-blue and non-green open spaces. These are open spaces that do not primarily feature natural water bodies or dense vegetation. So these are characterized by their urban or developed landscape, which may include urban plazas, industrial zones, transport infrastructure, and paved services, other built environments, and other non-vegetated areas. So you can also here you can find these examples as well in our guidelines. The regional level, we have brownfields, road networks, we have airports, airfields, cemetery. At the city or municipal level, we have sacred ground, sports field or sports pitches, volcanic hazard fields, and we have malls, parking lots, playgrounds. And at the smallest unit, meron din po tayong some examples, rotunda, squares, plazas, amusement parks, etc. So these are important because later on, this will be valuable for the LGUs in terms of classifying, identifying, and making an inventory of their open spaces in their cities or municipalities. So moving on, um, I think this is just a few more slides in my presentation. Um, we will now discuss mainstreaming, no, OSD in the CLU. Okay, so as mentioned, the OSD in the OSD guidelines provide a uniform classification that LGUs can apply, no, in planning. So open spaces, as I've mentioned earlier, are critical infrastructure for climate resilience, social equity, and environmental quality. So when we mainstream these spaces into our CLUPs and our zoning ordinances, we ensure that they are included in the programs, projects, and investments that support sustainable and resilient land use plan. So meron po ang first step plan, open space development, kung saan we assess what we already have, existing parks, nasan ba yan, ano yung mga vacant lots, ano yung green areas, etc. And identify challenges and opportunities. So this happens in the pre-planning phase. Next, we move on to the planning phase, where we create the actual open spaces designs and open space plan. So these should reflect our local character, goals, and community vision. This is the stage also where we again consult, no, our people, our communities, and design with purpose and inclusivity. Third is we have the implementation or the action phase where we execute our open space plans. So dito we develop our parks, ano ba yung mga degraded areas that need regeneration, or we implement or create our new open spaces. So the goal in this step is to have a clear and doable roadmap for preservation and development. And then lastly, the sustain phase, no, of our first step plan to OSD. This is the phase of monitoring, evaluation, and maintenance, where we make sure that our open spaces remain functional, safe, and high quality over time. And we track, of course, the progress of our projects, assess results, and then adjust our OSD strategies as needed. So after reviewing the um, OSD 4 steps, no? So pasok po natin or ito po yung mga entry points ng open space development in the CLUP process. So the guidelines highlight entry points for open space. Planning can be incorporated, ensuring that open spaces are systematically included in local and land use planning and become a core part of the development of sustainable and resilient communities. So these are just we'll just run through, no, the key steps and then the key outputs in terms of the integration of the OS So again, we start with identifying our key players, um, their roles and responsibilities, and this is part of our um, organizing process. So here you have a TWG and a compiled list of existing open space information that will serve as your starting point for planning. For step two, the key output of the integration is a list of stakeholders or interest groups and an IEC plan to inform and involve the community. So this is really about building partnerships, identifying our stakeholders. For step three, uh, the key output of this step is again a reaffirm locally. And then the workshop results, no, based from our feedback kits, this shows the agreed open space vision. So step three is about redefining our direction and making sure that everyone shares a clear and inspiring vision for open space development in the LG. For step four, the key output of this integrator is the open space inventory. Okay, so magkakaroon po no, ng profile o inventory of existing and potential open spaces and a local classification of open space types based from the synergy classification of open spaces shown earlier. Okay? So this step is knowing about what's on the ground so we can plan based on accurate data and actual conditions of your locality or municipality. So in step the expected outputs here are the clear open space development goals and the outcome and output indicators that will help us measure our progress in implementation later on. The key output here is your preferred development trust and development strategies that will guide the LGU toward that vision. So we can use data such as open space infra, zoning maps, our prioritized development trust, our general land use policy areas, and the results from our participatory meeting with our stakeholders. Well, the next step, on the seventh step, yes. So this is where we translate our open space strategies into concrete land use plans. So by the end of this integration step, we produce a local open spaces map. So these open space um, are based open spaces map are based on the open space inventory that we've conducted earlier. Okay? We also produce open space development programs and projects and land and water use facilities that align with our overall open space development strategy. So moving on to step eight, um, by the end of this integration, we produce our overlay zones for open spaces. We are even we are able to identify open space provisions in our zoning ordinance, and we are able to local zoning ordinance that's development. So this step ensures na meron tayong legal backing no? um, for our open space plans that need to be implemented and protected. Now for the last um, four steps, no? Um, for step nine, and so we bring the public into the process by presenting our open space development plans in our public hearings. So we aim to have a stronger sense of ownership from our community, no, in this step for integrating OSP in WISDA. The next process in terms of integrating OSC in the review, adoption, and approval of the CLUP and ZO. So this is where we adopt officially the Open Space Development Plan, the enacted CLUP and zoning ordinance that includes open space provisions. Now on to the last two steps, the output of this integration on our implementation step are LGU structures and systems, the overall CLU information and IEC plan that integrates our open space development plans and policies. And lastly, on the 12th step, no, we have our the monitor evaluating the loop and zero. So this is where we sustain again the gains that we've made, monitor the progress in terms of implementing our OSC plan. So again, um, integrating OSD in our Club NGO provides legal and policy support, strengthens institutional capacity of our LGUs, ensures sustainability, monitoring, and alignment of our KPIs, budgets, and accountability, and ensures OSD is prioritized alongside housing, infrastructure, and economy. So my next slide would be the a brief overview of the OSCP plan for the last two. So the OSD plan produced by the LGU highlights the unique landscape attributes, physical, biological, socioeconomic, cultural, and built environments of your LGU. Okay? So it identifies, as I've mentioned kanina, yung open space potential and yung existing open spaces and proposes sustainable, inclusive strategies for development. So it can be a strategic roadmap, integrated or standalone plan, integrated in your CMU. So it should contain the following. So aligned with the four-step OST plan development and our 12-step CLUP process. The OST plan contains your um, city or municipality's profile, their visions, goals, and objectives, the classification of the open spaces in the LGU based from the inventory that you conducted, the different development approaches, the open space maps, policies, and of course, our corresponding PPAs and implementation and monitoring evaluation strategies. So, makikita rin po ito sa guidelines, no? Yung ating table for your um, pagkakaroon ng inventory of your open spaces in your locality. So, we map the existing and potential open spaces in your cities or municipalities. So, by adopting these guidelines, please take the lead and support from partners and other stakeholders and projects become compliant, climate resilient, inclusive, and sustainable. So together, by adopting these guidelines, greener, safer, and more livable communities, we are not just building homes, but we are building communities. And if I may borrow also from our Shelter Mark team, we are helping together, our LGUs, our government agencies. We are building homes, communities, and happiness for our Filipino communities. So yun lamang po at maraming salamat.
Okay, we have, are there cities in the Philippines that can be considered as smart cities? And if there is, in what way? I believe this is question for Ma'am Jenny. Ma'am Jenny, I think you're still on mute.
Hello, magandang umaga. Thank you, Claude, and for our participants. I think the DOSC also pilot tested yung kanilang smart city program or projects. So these are LCUs that uses science, technology, or an innovation. I think one of the examples would be in Baguio City. So meron doong Project Minerva that uses data science or AI to help monitor tourism flow, traffic, etc. They've also have pilot LGUs under the DOST at least, under the Smart and Sustainable Communities program, which specializes on tech enablement, data innovation, digital innovations that they pilot tested. So nagkaroon din, if I may recall, nagkaroon din sila ng partnership with Isabela. Ayan, is a nominated din yung Santiago City, Isabela, as one of the smart cities where they use or utilize GIS mapping and data management in terms of transportation. And they've also partnered not just with the LGU, but the Santiago City, Isabela State University in Santiago City, which is a hub for research and technology in terms of STI. So I think we can benchmark or use those cities as examples.
Okay.